We organize our entire lives around the calendar. Birthdays, holidays, deadlines, pretty much everything. But have you ever actually stopped to think about where it comes from? Well, it turns out the system we use every single day is the result of this wild 2,000-year journey, and it's filled with some seriously strange quirks. So let's dive in. It all kicks off with a really simple question. You've got September, from the Latin for 7, October for 8, November for 9, and December for 10. But wait a minute. Those are our 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th months. So what's going on here? Is our whole calendar off by 2 months or something? And the answer, well, it's not some simple typo. It's this incredible story that takes us back to ancient Rome, complete with clashing egos of emperors and the centuries-long quest to perfectly sync up human time with the stars. And it all begins with a calendar that was, to put it nicely, a total mess. All right, so let's wind the clock way, way back to the very beginning, to the first Roman calendar. Tradition says it was designed by the founder of Rome himself, Romulus. And his system? It's the key to solving that whole riddle about October. So check this out, Rome's very first calendar had only 10 months. It kicked off in March, or Martius for Mars, the god of war, which makes sense because that's when you'd start your military campaigns. And if you look at the end, there they are, September, October, November, December. They were literally just called months 7, 8, 9, and 10. So mystery solved for a minute. But this calendar had a way bigger problem.
It was only 304 days long. I mean, that's it. And if you know anything about, well, planet Earth, you know that's way off. It meant that after just a couple of years, the months for spring would be happening in the middle of winter. The calendar was just completely drifting away from the seasons. It was a total disaster for anything like farming or planning. A fix was needed, and fast.
So along comes the first major correction, thanks to Rome's second king, Numa Pompilius. He knew he had to get the calendar way closer to the actual solar year to make it, useful. His solution was pretty straightforward. Just add more months. So he tacked on Januarius, named for Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings and endings, and Februarius for Februus, the god of purification. Now the key thing here is he added them to the end of the old calendar. So the year still started in March, but now it wrapped up with February. This got them to 355 days, which was a lot closer to a real year. For centuries, that's how it worked. But then, get this, in 1530 BC, a military crisis in ancient Spain completely changes the game. Rome needed to get its military leaders, the consuls, appointed earlier so they could get ready for the spring campaigns. So, just as a practical fix, they moved the start of the year from March 1st to January 1st. And what started as a temporary military solution just stuck. A war in Spain is the reason our New Year's Eve party is in the dead of winter and not in the spring.
Okay, so even with those extra months, the 355-day calendar was still a lunar calendar, and it kept falling out of sync. To fix it, they'd have to randomly stick in an extra month every few years. It was messy, it was confusing. By the time Julius Caesar came to power, he basically said, all right, enough of this nonsense, we're going to fix this for good. He wanted a perfect, scientific calendar.
Caesar brought in an astronomer named Sojournes to design a new system based not on the moon, but on the sun. This was a radical change. The calendar went from that messy 355-day system to a clean 365 days. And the fix for keeping it in sync? It was brilliant in its simplicity. One extra day, added every 4 years. And just like that, the leap year was born. So, how'd they figure this out? Well, so Janus's big insight was that the Earth's orbit takes 365 days and about 6 hours. And that's where the magic happens. Those 4 extra 6-hour periods, they add up perfectly to one full 24-hour day every 4 years. It was a shockingly accurate measurement for its time. Now, to get the total number of days right, they padded out the existing months, making most of them 30 or 31 days long. But what about February? Well, since it was the last and, let's be honest, least important month in the old calendar, it got the short end of the stick. It was left with just 28 days to make all the math work out perfectly.
And of course, you can't have a massive, history-changing reform without a little bit of ego, right? After Caesar's death, the Roman Senate decided to honor him by renaming his birth month, Quintilis, the 5th month, to Julius. And yep, that's where we get the name July.
And this is where it gets really good. It's a perfect example of how imperial rivalry shaped our lives. Caesar's successor, Augustus, comes along, and he's not about to be outdone. He renames the next month, Sextilis, to Augustus. But there was one tiny problem. It only had 30 days, and Caesar's month, July, had 31. Augustus couldn't have that. So what does he do? He literally steals a day from poor, defenseless February and adds it to August, giving them both 31 days and leaving February with the 28 days we know today.
The Julian calendar was a masterpiece. It was used across Europe for over 1,500 years. But it wasn't quite perfect. That 6-hour estimate was just a tiny bit off. And over all those centuries, that tiny error started to add up into a really big problem.
Okay, so here's the nitty-gritty. Sozogenes had calculated the year at exactly 365.25 days. The true solar year is just a hair shorter. We're talking about an 11-minute difference. Doesn't sound like much, does it? But let those 11 minutes stack up year after year for over a millennium, and you get a drift of one full day every 128 years.
So, fast forward to the late 16th century, and suddenly, the Julian calendar is a full 10 days ahead of the seasons. This was a huge deal for the Catholic Church because the date of Easter is calculated based on the spring equinox. With the equinox showing up on March 11th, the most important holiday in Christianity was being celebrated at the wrong time. Something had to be done.
So Pope Gregory XIII decides on a solution that is, well, it's pretty wild. He issues an order to just erase 10 days from existence. Seriously. One night, people in Catholic countries went to bed on Thursday, October 4th, 1582, and when they woke up, it was Friday, October 15th. Can you even imagine that? 10 days of your life just gone.
And to make sure this kind of drift never happened again, the Pope's Commission came up with an incredibly clever new rule for leap years. It's this beautiful three-step logic. Step 1. A year is a leap year every 4 years. Simple enough. But Step 2, the exception. If the year is divisible by 100, it is not a leap year. This trims the fat. And then Step 3, the exception to the exception, unless that year is also divisible by 400. That's why 2000 was a leap year, but 1900 wasn't. Brilliant.
So after all that, after the Romans and Caesar and the Pope, we finally did it. We created a perfect system, right? The story's over. Well, not quite. The hunt for perfection, it seems, is never really over.
Even our super fancy Gregorian calendar, with its tricky leap year rules, isn't 100% perfect. It's still off. Not by much, but it's off by about 26 seconds every single year. And again, 26 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but you let that clock run, and in about 3,300 years or so, our calendar will be off by one full day yet again. It really just goes to show you that trying to measure time isn't a solved problem. It's this constant, ongoing human project.
So the big takeaway here is that the calendar on your wall isn't some static, finished thing. It's really more like the latest version of a 2,000-year-old piece of software that's been getting patched for centuries. Which really makes you wonder, right? Sometime around the year 4900, humanity is probably going to need another great skip. What do you think that future fix is going to look like?